Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Want to go ahead and get some late breaking news, obviously, as it pertains to college hoops. And listen, this is a wild time here in April in college hoops. As everybody knows, this month is probably the most important month on the calendar in terms of roster building. And obviously for most of April, we spent a lot of time talking about the transfer portal. But as you also know, there are still a handful of difference-making players out of the high school ranks, and one of them has officially just come off the board moments ago. That player, Liam McNeeley. 6'8" forward, was originally committed to Indiana, decommitted from Indiana about 6 or so weeks ago. Recruitment has taken a few twists and turns, but just moments ago, as I just said, he made his college decision, and Liam McNeeley, 6'8" forward, played at Montverde Academy. He has committed to the two-time defending champion UConn Huskies. Major recruiting win for Dan Hurley. I would argue maybe the most impressive recruiting win he has had at UConn. So much to discuss. Let's dive into it. By the way, should mention, as the scroller tells you, for all your late-breaking UConn news, make sure to follow our Twitter account, Torres on UConn. Oh, by the way, we still got a few of those Mora Hurley 24 tees. But let's go ahead and dive in. Liam McNeeley, fascinating story, right? As I just said, 6'8", forward, was committed to Indiana. The recruitment opens up. I think at first glance, we all thought maybe Kansas would be a player. He chose Kansas or Indiana over Kansas early in the recruitment. But over the last couple weeks, a few schools has emerged, and UConn was at the top from the beginning, okay? First off, in terms of the player, 6'8", really good athlete. Listen, I don't think he's like an A++++, whatever athlete, but he's very good. And obviously the thing that he brings to UConn, and he would have brought to any college campus, this kid can shoot the crap out of the ball. Elite shooter, elite bucket getter. I think the stat was that in recorded games in EYBL last summer, that's obviously the highest level of Nike grassroots basketball, he shot over 50% from the three-point line. And so he's a stud. He gets buckets. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, is he going to fit in nicely in that UConn offense that is obviously spearheaded by Luke Murray. Now, what I find interesting about this commitment, listen, I think this is so big for the kid and so big for UConn, and I kind of want to dive into both sides. First of all, credit to the kid for doing what was best for him. And I'm not saying like, oh, because he went to UConn, that's what's best for him. But what I found interesting about this recruitment, when he decommitted from Indiana, like I said, I think the early assumption was, well, he's got the relationship with Kansas. They're losing the Johnny Furphy kid. That's where he's going to end up. And what I think that kid did was really take a step back and say, okay, what is the best place for me to develop as a player, as a person, and be developed into an NBA-type player? And as I keep telling everybody, I would argue that UConn already might be the best development program in college basketball. I said it a million times, but Donovan Clingan was like a top 40, top 50 recruit coming out of high school. Obviously going to be a top 10 pick this year. Jordan Hawkins, a year ago, top 50 or so prospect, ends up as a lottery pick. James Bouknight, top 50 prospect, ends up as a lottery pick. Alex Caravan, about the 100th ranked player according to 24/7 Sports, potentially could get drafted this year if he stays in. So Dan Hurley has this incredible track record. I give Liam McNeeley credit for blocking out the noise, blocking out whatever, and saying, what is best for my future? Well, crap. This program has already developed a ton of pros, and this is what's best for me. Obviously, he had a lot of other good options. Could have gone to Kentucky to play for Mark Pope. John Calipari in Arkansas wanted him bad. Dusty May, the new head coach at Michigan, I believe the quote was, Liam McNeeley was the first call that he made when he got the Michigan job. Liam McNeeley will be a Husky. Also think we got to go ahead and give credit to Dan Hurley here, okay? And listen, I hope this doesn't come off wrong, and I hope UConn fans don't get mad. I do think this is Dan Hurley's biggest recruiting win so far. Now, listen, Dan Hurley has kind of done pretty much everything in recruiting up to this point, mostly, and I'll explain why in a minute. He has found those guys that I mentioned who were under the radar, developed the crap out of them, turn them into pros. He's gotten a kid like Steph Castle, who by the time Steph Castle was in his senior year of high school, was obviously a projected one-and-done lottery pick, McDonald's All-American. But even when Steph Castle committed, I think he was about a top 30 or so player. He was being recruited by the Auburns, the Arkansas, whatever. But this is the first time that Dan Hurley looked Kansas and Kentucky and all of those huge programs in the eyes and said, I ain't backing down. We're coming. We're taking Liam McNeeley right from you, okay? And it's not to say that he needed to do this or that, that's not what I'm saying. Dan Hurley, as I said, he's the best coach in college basketball. I believe he's the best evaluator. I believe he is the best developer. And so the fact now that he's getting kids with an even higher upside when they're coming in, it speaks to how dangerous this could be. Beyond that, I think there's a couple other things that stand out about this recruitment. From both the UConn perspective, also the Liam McNeeley perspective. I think what is probably pretty clear, and again, this might sound like a knock to UConn, but it isn't. I give Dan Hurley credit because he has been very vocal. NIL is not going to be the only reason that you come here. And so why I bring it up, whether it's Kansas, if they were ever in the mix, Kentucky obviously wanted to visit. We know that Mark Pope got a check for $4 million in NIL money the day that he accepted that job. Arkansas obviously has more money than they can ever spend. And so I give Dan Hurley credit because my guess is this was not just a work, he's going to the highest bidder. This was real recruiting. This was real, explanation as to what the program can do for you beyond just a monetary figure. By the way, credit to Liam McNeeley as well. Now, to be clear, kid's not going to be, rubbing, nickels together at night to try and find a ham sandwich, okay? UConn is going to take care of him, but I think this is kind of an important note in the NIL era. At this point, everybody has money. I think a lot of these best players are sitting there looking, okay, especially out of the high school ranks. Who is going to develop me? Who is going to get me ready for the pros? This is a 15 to 20-year decision with my pro future in focus, much more so than it is just a one-year thing. By the way, if a player chooses a college over NIL, that's fine. I don't really care. Get paid. I'm a capitalist. Doesn't matter to me. But I give credit to Dan Hurley, standing on his ground. What's the kid say? Standing on his business and saying, this is how we're going to do it. You want to take the bag, go somewhere else. And I think it's a nice a nice moment for UConn to go ahead and get this done. I also think, by the way, for Dan Hurley to get this done without Liam McNeeley visiting any other college campuses is big as well. We know Mark Pope wanted to visit. We know Calipari wanted to visit at Arkansas. So to get this done before he took other visits was huge. Finally, and this is the important part, what does it mean for UConn basketball in 2024-2025? Well, I'll start by saying, like everybody else, I really like UConn, and I don't know how you couldn't, considering the fact that they're the back-to-back national champions. And obviously coming into this past season, UConn lost its top three players, Jordan Hawkins, Adama Sanogo, and also Andre Jackson. They obviously were picked to finish third in the Big East. I think they were about 9th or 10th in the preseason polls. But I just bring it up because Dan Hurley's proven it doesn't matter who he's going to lose. He's going to figure out a way to put a national championship caliber roster on the floor. And I do think Liam McNeeley is a big piece of that. Obviously, right now, the expectation, Hassan Diarra is going to be back. Samson Johnson's going to be back. Alex Caravan, we will see if he ends up staying in the NBA draft. He declared a few days ago. I keep going back to the statement that he made at the national championship parade. I have a chance to graduate in 3 years. I have a chance to come back and three-peat. I have a chance to do something that nobody's done in college basketball history outside of UCLA a million years ago. And so I just bring it up because I do still expect him to come back. But the thing I keep going back to, listen, I love Hassan. Obviously, we had him on the show. I love Samson Johnson. We know Terrace Reed is coming in. We know there are some very nice young pieces in the program. Jalen Stewart, Solo Ball, freshmen who are going to get better. Oh, by the way, Ahmad Noel, another freshman going into next year who I expect big things from. But at the end of the day, when I look at this UConn run over the last couple of years, it's about having that Hurley intensity on defense and on the glass, but also being able to put the ball in the basket, right? It's the most common sense thing in basketball, but you can be great on defense. You can hustle, you can have energy, you can play with all the fight in the world. If you can't put the ball in the basket, it doesn't matter. Dan Hurley has said that over the last couple of years. And so now you add a dude that, listen, I think it's a nice balance because I think this is a guy that as time goes on, as he gets more comfortable, I'm not saying he's going to average 20 as a freshman, but I think on any given night, he can get you 20 to 25. And those are the kind of guys that you need in this offense, assuming that the defensive intensity is going to be there as well. Obviously, if you're not willing to play on defense, you're not going to play on Dan Hurley. But the thing that I also like about Liam McNeeley, remember, he was at Montverde Academy last year. That is the premier program in high school basketball. Played with Cooper Flagg, who's obviously headed to Duke, #1 player in America. Played with Derek Queen, McDonald's All-American, headed to Maryland. Rob Wright, headed to Baylor, top 30 prospect. Asa Noel, who's headed to Georgia, McDonald's All-American. I bring it up because this is a kid who's perfect for UConn from the perspective he's used to playing with other good players. And so, as Dan Hurley said, what did Dan Hurley say all year about Steph Castle? He said the great thing about Steph Castle, he's a 5-star talent with a 2-star attitude. Parents don't come in here and demand things. He doesn't demand things. He's not mad if he doesn't get this. He has bought into the team concept. And I don't know Liam McNeeley personally, but my guess is he will as well. So I'm very excited to see him blossom, him develop, but also to see him fit in the grand scheme with UConn. And obviously from the UConn perspective, I'm curious to see what's next. I know I've had a lot of people ask me as far as what UConn is doing right now. I don't think Liam McNeeley is the last piece. Now, I don't think, UConn's going to bring in 7, 8 guys in the portal unless something like stunning happens, okay? But I do think they are still in the mix for a player or two who they deem to be priority recruits. I don't think, as of I'm recording right now, I don't think taking Liam McNeeley automatically means that you can't go after Kobe Brea from Dayton. You have made his Final 5. Don't think it means you can't go after some other pieces if they enter the portal. And I don't want to say UConn's done for the summer, but I think they like the pieces in the program. I think they like the guys they have coming in, including Terrace Reed, the veteran center from Michigan, and obviously the 2 other freshmen in this class. But Liam McNeeley officially headed to UConn. Major commitment for Dan Hurley. Major commitment for the Huskies. If you enjoyed this video, do me a quick favor. Make sure to subscribe to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day. Oh, by the way, follow Torres on UConn on Twitter for all your UConn coverage. And oh, by the way, grab that Mora Hurley 24 tee before they're